So then I'm, looking at the books as we're planning and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm just being transparent here. I'm just like, we're not paying our bills.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got an adult decision that I have to make. And I knew too that people like my team, that I was just like, I know that they're wondering how in the world is he doing this when he's always bickering, like having a bad attitude about how are we going to, pay for bills and junk like that right now. And I didn't tell Regan this, audience, but my fantastic news to share with you all, I'm canceling off a 2-week trip so that way I can make adult decisions to work enough to be able to meet our work goals.
You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices.
Welcome to Everyday Practices. This is your co-host, Regan Robertson, here with a special guest and co-host that I'll be interviewing today, Dr. Chad Johnson. Chad, how are you doing?
Why, thank you, Regan. I knew there was a reason I was on here today. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Listeners, you haven't heard us chit-chatting for the last 30 minutes or so. In thinking about this past year and how it's been, we thought it would be really special to bring you guys a series where I interview from the doctor's perspective. And I couldn't think of a better person to interview than you, Chad.
Woohoo! Sorry to hear that, but let's do it.
Well, I think the theme of this is when your plans hit the fan. So a year in reflection.
That's right.
Everything that has occurred each year. You and I are both very optimistic people. I think we've been called twins more than once.
That's
and
right.
I think the optimism is a big piece of that pie. And I know I started out the year quite optimistically, as did you. And this year caused everyone in the world to pivot pretty significantly. And I think it tested you. I think it stretched you as a leader. I think there were so many different pieces and dynamics. I thought it'd be great to have a conversation with you about how your reflection on the year and how it scarred you,
right?
How it grew you, and what you're looking forward to in 2021.
Well, just recently, Renee and Victoria said, yeah, well, you certainly have thicker skin through this. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you talk about stretching my leadership. I even just wonder if it made me question my leadership. I mean, to go so far as to say that. So, I mean, some people were probably resolute through it all, but I wasn't positive that I was the leader that I thought I was in 2019. Sure.
What started to bring about those questions for you? I mean, where did that first show up for you and you started to have that uncertainty creep in?
I have a picture of it.
You do?
In my office. Yeah, it was day one from when we closed. I think that's because up until then, I was nervous, our close from COVID. When we actually closed, it's just like, well, crud. I mean, how does a business stay, what do you call it? Stay viable, stay solvent, stay open when you're not open. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, up until then, I think I had some optimism that I was going to make it work. And at that point, then I was like, oh, crud. So that was me swearing,
That is about as heavy as you swear.
Oh, shoot, crud. But it just is what it is. That was the point where, I started struggling between, trying to be the optimist and going, what the heck was there to be optimistic about? I think after our 9 weeks of closure, I was down $500,000 in production.
Oof.
At that point too, at the beginning of the year, I hadn't made up in my mind that we were going to pull the plug on Delta and go full fee for service.
That's right.
So the catalyst was COVID. So that was a good thing. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it's not like this year has wrapped up where I'm just like, oh man, I'm a fee for service doc that's just rolling in the money. And those little piddle peons that are still doing insurance, they're dumb. It's just like, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I mean, like when patients are leaving this year of all years. So was it the best year to make that decision? Yes and no. I just heard on my Audible with Matthew McConaughey's Green Light book, he was just saying, more important than making one decision one way or the other is making a decision and sticking with it. Hey,
That's right.
I hear that. And I was just like, absolutely. Even if you chose the other way and you end up with a solid B+ plan, it's better than being frozen and just, not executing something.
How did you, what did you kind of employ to help you get through some of the darker hours? I know you and I had the blessing of talking to each other quite a bit,
Yeah.
and both of us being optimistic and rather sunshiny on the outside, it can be hard to see whether that type of personality is struggling.
Yeah.
And there were some dark moments for you. Where did you go? Where did you dig deep? How did you float yourself through?
Sure. So I was struggling, and I mean, to be transparent enough for the listener, because I mean, that's why they're listening, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think I am to some degree still struggling with it. Like you set yourself up for success and
Mhm.
then you execute it, and then you eventually find some semblance of success, and then you go, look, it worked. Um, and even right now, I'm just, at the end of the year trying to wrap up, and I bought, I mean, to make matters worse, I bought, 2 new practices this year. So I've got 3 practices, and there was a ton of staff turnover. And so
Mhm.
that didn't help. And then because we were closed in Iowa, at least my office, we were closed for 9 weeks. So the 6-month anniversary of that, I set it up to where one of the offices we remodeled, and that was, a hit to the finances too, to close. But I thought, well, what a better time than 6 months after when we were closed to, take the least hit possible.
Mhm.
And it went a couple weeks longer than I expected, but nonetheless, it challenged me. So to get back to your original answer, there's been a lot that's challenged me this year, being steadfast and almost stoic with God. I mean, I feel like I have him and me are good. Like I have a good relationship that I don't have to question how he feels about me and how I feel about him. And that made for a nice steadfast foundation. It's not like a comfortable foundation. I mean, a rock isn't a pillow.
Right.
Like when people talk about someone being their rock, it's just like, well, in a religious sense, if God is our rock, it's just like, that's not a sleep-o-matic bed or whatever. It's not comfortable all the time. And I've never heard it said that way. So I hope it's not the wrong way to put it. But what I'm saying is like, I knew where he stood, and the more I stand on him, the more I can rely on that, some of the foundational truths. But it's also in the sense that, I've got my earthly thing to do. I can connect with him and be resolute in that. But at the same time, I mean, teeth aren't all that matters in life. I mean, maybe that's another lesson this year. It's not like dentistry is all that matters, and God cares so much about my office that he'll move mountains to make sure that I'm successful in 2020. He doesn't necessarily care about that. So there's that, that upbringing of mine, that personal conviction. And I think
Well,
that helped me. Go ahead.
you bring up a really good point. I think that is something that, even though I'm not a dentist, kind of hit me personally when we shut down. I felt like the message loud and clear was, well, dentistry isn't essential.
Yeah,
So,
right.
and I saw, and I saw it both ways, because I thought, well, of course we need to be safe. We've got the
It is
aerosol
and it
question. There's all
isn't. Of
that.
course. What is essential? I mean, air, water,
Right.
right. So, I mean, essential is kind of a manipulative word. What do you mean by
Mm-hmm.
essential?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think it's essential. Americans are using it right now. So dentistry, I think, should stay open. So don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's not so essential that God's going to say, well, I'm going to manipulate people to stay in your office, even though they want to go work somewhere else. I had people leave the office, for $1 more down the street. I mean, it just happened. And I tell you,
What
the other
did,
frustrating thing was that people would want to, like I hear other dentists saying, man, I'm having my best year ever. And I'm not. I mean,
Right.
and I'm okay to say that. Guys, listen, anyone listening on this audience, if you're not having your best year ever, you're in good company, because it's just not. I'm making probably like a third of what I made last year. Just, I mean, to give reference, and I'm not saying that in a braggadocious way. I don't know why you would, but like, I'm saying it because like, if you're feeling the real pain, I am too. And
hmm
I mean, call it what you want. From a religious standpoint, God was a foundation of mine.
hmm
um, Having family time, working out. Regan, you and I have talked about it before, so like working out was a big one for me. I hopped on my bike and I logged a lot of hours, and you know what? I'd pop in my headphones and listen to my audibles, and I was working on, myself, and working on thinking stuff through. Honestly, I had a lot of 3 to 5 hour bike rides, and
hmm
I was unemployed. At the time, I'm like, great, I'm an unemployed 40-year-old business owner who's working for free when I do go to work, to be able to pay the bills, and let's just get it done, because I don't know what else to do other than to just keep doing what we're supposed to do.
Keep moving forward. I was concerned about the psychological damage, and it'll be
Yes.
interesting to see in the year coming forward what studies are done on that. Just from the subconscious feeling of we're not deemed essential, so now all of a sudden we're out of business. We've got student debt or whatever debt, new practice debt, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Of essential. I don't care what people call me. Like, so if someone says, well, you're not essential, I'm just like, well, screw you. I don't care what they think,
Yes.
but being closed was sure detrimental and tough. Why? Because the people you're leading, your team, is now looking at you going, okay, what are you going to do? Or at least
Yeah.
maybe they're not even focused on that, but you sure feel like they depend on you. You have a lot of people and families and a community that's relying on you to be steadfast. And it's just like, I don't know. There's a point where I don't know if I can be that for you guys. And I don't know if I'm going to share that, but I don't know if I can be that either.
I think that to me speaks personally, and I would hope that it speaks to anyone who supports a family, or supports a spouse. Or I really feel like this year for me brought to light what it must have felt like in the nuclear families of the 40s and the 50s, like
Yes.
the person who had to go and work and bring home the paycheck and carry all of that stress and that responsibility forward. I'm 41, so I think this was really my year of feeling that and being like, wow, there's, when something like this happens, have we saved appropriately? Do we have the proper cushion? Are the kids going to
Right.
be okay? I have to go in and make sure that all the employees are going to be okay.
Right.
And yes, there'll be team changes along that. So I think it's a lot of pressure. So during those 3 to 5 hour bike rides that you were on,
Right.
what made its way to the surface for you? Was there clarity that came about to you this year? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a flippant answer, but when I was on the bike ride, I was like, I'm doing what I need to do. Listen, I'm no teeth to work on, for example, at that time. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say it's April, and I'm riding the hills, getting to the top, and let's say it's before the sunrise. I stop and take a picture of the sunrise. I think that aesthetic, whether it's connecting with God and or nature, but stopping and taking that picture, and it's like, well, listen, I'd be upset that I'm on the bike ride right now, not working. I'm not being lazy. This is what I can do. And when I get home, I'm going to build a playground in the backyard with the kids. I'm sure maybe only a quarter of the people or 5% of the people, I don't know, 75, there's a certain percentage, and I don't know, of people had this, but like, I remember lying in bed and thinking, man, it is tough to breathe. Like, I'm actually physically like how, and I would tell Sarah, my wife, this, and she'd be like, wow, that's what anxiety does. I mean, that's what an anxiety attack or a panic attack, whatever you want to call it, is. And I guess that's just foreign to me. And so like, I had to kind of connect with myself more, and getting up with my ugly self. I mean, like, I guess when I'm upset, like, I'm upset with myself because I'm optimistic and how I should be. And some of the time I'm not, but I'm also not going to fake it. The nice thing is, if anyone's ever seen me, chipper day after day after day after week after month, is because that's exactly how I was.
Yes.
But this year, like, instead of just faking it, like, there were some days when I was like, and I had to own up to that. And I didn't like that. I still wake up sometimes and I'm just like, what is my deal? And it's just like, well, we're all on a little bit of an edge.
Mhm.
And so now that we're back, like when we got back to work, I started, getting up. We start work at 6. And so I would hit the pool at 5 a.m. for a half an hour, big deal. So you know what it was?
Yeah,
Is
but you have
just
to
to
get
get
up
me
at
up and
what, like
moving.
4? What time
At
do you get up?
4:30. Yeah, it's just right up the street. Yeah. So I get up at 4:30, hit the pool at 5, get out of the pool at 5:30 and get to work at 6. And the fact is, it just kind of gets me moving. I have my head in the water and I'm focusing on breathing.
Yeah.
And I'm also focusing on rhythm and symmetry, and just I can zone out. It's not really meditative, but it kind of is sometimes I realize I look down at my watch and it's like, oh wow, that's 400 yards. And so I'm just busting it out, and just and it's kind of cool where it's like that saying that's just like, make your bed. It's like, get up but for me, it's not just making the bed. It's get up, get in a workout. And if I'm not going to work out, then sleep in, make the most of it. Be intentional about not feeling bad about sleeping in, like an extra 45 minutes. Who cares?
I think giving ourselves grace this year.
That's right.
Yeah. I think
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's definitely what I hear from that. And what's interesting about that in the swimming, because I can't imagine myself getting up and going swimming like that.
It's not for everyone. No.
I can't. Well,
Right.
I really love swimming, but the thought process of jumping into the cold pool, I'd be like, what? I want to wake up slowly and ease into the day. What it does, though, is it really pulls you present in your body. And as someone who is definitely someone who suffers with anxiety, I've had panic attacks this year. It's been quite a special year.
Yeah.
The
Proud
best
of you for
advice,
admitting it.
well,
I mean, that's
I
not
think it's
easy for
good to
people to admit.
no, but
Yeah.
I think it is good to admit it, because I think we're all actually really struggling with a lot of the same things, but not talking about it is a huge detriment.
That's right.
And my big claim to fame this year, I think, was getting into therapy, which now
Yes.
I'm really going down the path, but it's not. I guess I had a lot of assumptions about what therapy is, and really it's all these little tiny tools to help you get back and be present in your body. So anxiety is that future worry, that
Yes.
what could happen, what
Worst case
has
scenario.
happened. You spin up, and there's, like, you talked about, like, still some mornings that you wake up now and you're kind of on a negative slant and you're wondering what's going on here. It's because our bodies get used to these reinforcing patterns, and so there's a spin up with positive and there's a spin down with negative.
Synergism.
So if you get hooked on one of those negative, it's a lot easier for your brain to start looping. It's like the little
Yes.
synapses that use common highways in your brain.
Yes.
So it wants to go back down that highway again. And I think what you do to combat that, which is really interesting, is you force yourself into your body first thing in the morning by going swimming.
Right.
You don't give it a chance to.
Or running or lifting or cycling, whatever it was. But like, I was basically using my endorphins to override my cortisol levels.
Yes.
And you know what else is troublesome is I'm proud that I have a good attitude, because you do have to train it, right? So when I didn't have a good attitude, well, then I should be a little ashamed of that, or unproud about it, whatever the word is, because it's just like, well, wait a second. Like, if I'm proud for the good mental garden that I've tended, then shouldn't you be a little upset that you have let that go to weeds? So all I'm saying is, I mean, okay, yeah, give us grace, but yeah, it is tough to talk about and go, yeah, no, I haven't had a good year. And no, I haven't been my best self. I got, like, I'm trying to think, my high school voted me highest on life. and most school spirit and best personality. I won all three.
That is all Chad.
Yes.
That is all Chad. High on life.
Of course I'm proud of that. I mean, those sound like some good things, and yet this year, if people said, hey, let's all vote, I'm just like, yeah, I don't see myself winning that. I mean, like, let's just be real. Unless everyone else has been dragged down too, and it's a bell, or like a graded on a curve or something.
So you had a little bit of maturing this year. I mean, that you were tested to the point where you had no choice but to walk through that particular fire.
I did, and I am. I mean, like, so I don't want to make it sound like it's just over. And as the year is getting over, that I've matured and now I've arrived. It's just like, no, I'm still learning it. I'll tell you, like, okay, so let's get into dark secret number 2. Okay. So Shonda, for the listeners, my hygienist, she said, Chad, you are super passive aggressive at times. And I was like, well, number 1, that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Number 2, you're right. Number 3, I don't like that. And number 4, I'm going to change that. And I started thinking to myself, why am I passive aggressive? Did I grow up that way? Did I, is it just like how we are at work or in my family, or is it just me? And I got thinking, okay, so in dentistry, at least the way I see it. Okay. So some people are going to be like wrong. And other people are going to say, I can see that. I don't want to correct the thing that happens negatively right then. There's a patient there. So I'm not quick to make a change to what happened immediately right there and stop and say, hey, will you come to my office real quick so we can talk about something? Because that would be the most assertive and healthy thing to do is, okay, I'm going to park that in my mind and we're going to get back to that. But right now we have a task to achieve because it's patient-centered. Okay. So right or wrong, I mean, I think maybe as long as there was a healthy channel, but if you're trying to resolve that conflict of whatever happened, then that's fine. But I would, I suppose, over time, just let it slide, and then you'd let it slide some more. Well, over time, you build up resentment for that. And then you have to find an outlet to that. And so then you get aggressive about it in a passive way.
Do you think that's something that you kind of inherently used as a coping mechanism before 2020 and just carried through 2020?
Yes, this is not a 2020 problem. This is Chad's now going to deal with it because in 2020, why not freaking deal with all your mess? I mean, so I started YouTubing it. And in fact,
what? You started YouTubing it?
Yeah, I started YouTubing how to not be passive aggressive.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just did that this weekend.
Okay.
Shonda just told me this on Thursday, and I was like, well, I don't like that. So where I tend to go to learn how to deal with my problems, I don't know. I Google some stuff, but I YouTube stuff, and I was like, I want to watch videos about how, obviously I don't like this about me, but I also don't know how to deal with it. Otherwise I would deal with it, and then I wouldn't be passive aggressive, right?
Yes.
So,
well, I think there's a lot of reasons why people become passive aggressive. Right. And so I think diving into those elements of it might help you tease it out.
Yes,
see, we all need therapy, Chad, all of us.
Obviously so. Well, I mean, but I got thinking, I was just like, I don't know, maybe I can Freud myself out. I don't know. I'm just joking, but maybe I can figure this out because I'm not so deep in it that I can't acknowledge it and go, all right, well, let's pray about it. God, help me to not be so angry in a way that sabotages my communication. Because if the very thing that I'm trying to do is why don't people get what I'm trying to lay down here? And then they're going, I'm frustrated because his communication is not connecting. Therefore, I'm not going to change a darn thing about it subconsciously. Therefore, is it doing any good to drop sarcastic hints about how you wish that it were not to be that way? And I'll tell you what, I've said this before, I value autonomy. And I feel like when I go to someone and I go, Regan, that thing that you did is the exact opposite of what you should. And I'm going to be direct that I do not like that. And it hurts my feelings when you do that because it makes me feel blank. And it's just like, whoa, that really kind of bums me out. So then I don't do that.
Right.
And so I just go, Regan, you did that again, huh?
But do you, I'm going to push back, and I want every doctor who may feel this way also, because I think this is probably common. Doctors, if you're listening, I really do want to hear from you on this, because I feel that.
Am I the only one, doctors? Audience, come on.
In running a business, there's multiple intersections throughout your day. I feel that 2020 has created a beautiful vat of decision fatigue, where you are constantly prioritizing, what do you deal with now? What do you deal with later? Is this important to bring up now in the grand scheme of things, right?
Well, for example, do I want to fire someone right now when I've got an extraction to do and I'm going to be shaking from being so upset about it, whether it's nervous or mad or upset, whatever the word is for it, that I'm shaking while I'm giving the injection? Or do I bury it? Right. And I mean, we are masters at burying it. And some of you can be like, I don't bury it. And it's just like, yeah, I bet you don't. But then I bet there's some stuff that you do. And perhaps, I mean, the way that I see it, and maybe this is wrong, I'm just thinking out loud. If there's a person that says, I don't bury anything, I say it. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's very tactful. And I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be non-tactful. I try and be quite tactful.
I think there's something to be said for the situation that you're under.
That's right.
In any given day. So joy is a base. So regardless of the circumstance, joy is your base. That's your faith. That's what you say when you say faith. Your rock is your faith.
Yeah.
When I see you in a relaxed state, so I get to say this because I was your assistant down in the Dominican Republic, and I was nervous because I'd never done that. And my internal dialogue is, I'm going to mess everything up. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to embarrass Chad. I'm going to do all of these things. And you were extremely calm. You were extremely, you explained to me why it was important that we did such and such a certain way. And so I felt like it was really, I didn't feel like anything was passive at all. I felt like it, but you were in a very relaxed state also.
I think when I'm intentional, I'm good at communicating, but this year has spun intentionality out of whack. It just, and not for everyone. So don't take it wrong. When I'm saying this, I'm more or less throwing some stuff out there, being transparent, and some of you, this might stick, and it might really help to know that there's another guy that's like this, especially the guy that's, normally running the podcast. And some people start thinking that there's a reason that I am on this podcast, that I have it all figured out. Well, that curtain's down. It's like, I never really wanted people to feel that way. That's why I make fun of myself, that I'm just an Iowa boy here in the middle of the country that's just doing my thing. And yeah, I'm successful, but like at the same time, I'm not all that. So yeah.
I don't think anybody is all that. And that's what
No.
I appreciate. I knew you would be vulnerable with. How much do you think of this panic and this upset and unrest and uncertainty is financially driven?
80%. I mean, if I didn't have finances to worry about, I'd be pretty happy. Yeah. So here, Regan, let's get to this point. Okay. Why don't I drive the interview? I'm sorry, but like, so, but okay. Like we brought this up in our half-hour discussion before while we were just having fun. But I said, let's talk about Hawaii.
I was wondering when we were going to work Hawaiian. So I find that a lot of doctors, and myself included, were very reward driven.
Yes. Escapism.
And yes. And you brought up the Stockdale paradox.
Yes.
And so my question for you is tell us about your trip to Hawaii and in the land of COVID and what that meant.
So this year, having bought 2 practices, now having 3 practices, I told myself at the end of the year, when the kids are on Christmas break, I'm going to reward myself, and we're going to go for 2 freaking weeks to Kauai. So I wait, and October 15th, I see this note pop up on my, Google News that says October 15th, Hawaii is reopening, but you have to get a nasal swab test and have a negative test within 72 hours. And then you don't have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Sweet.
Easy.
Book the flights because no one's going there. Everyone's scared to go. And so no one's going there. I called my points because I don't, like I said, I'm not getting paid this year as much, but I thought I can justify it by, using my points. Let's do that. And I'm going to take us family of 5. We're going to go for 2 weeks. It'll be great. Week on the South Shore, week on the North Shore, best of both worlds. Let's rock this out on Kauai style, okay? And then we get to Thanksgiving, and Kauai says that they're not going to honor the rest of the state's nasal swab test thing. You still have to quarantine for 2 weeks if you go to Hawaii. Crud. All right, so let's cancel Kauai and go to Maui. Now we're going to go to Maui. That's what we're going to do. I tell Sarah and I tell the kids, I'm like, that's what we're going to do for this whole year, and that'll kind of be my reward.
Yes.
So then I'm, looking at the books as we're planning and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm just being transparent here. I'm just like, we're not paying our bills.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got an adult decision that I have to make. Actually, I was with my buddy, Ryan, that I've known since preschool. And he goes, you need to not go on that trip. You need to cancel it. Just cancel what you can. And I was just like, shut up. I was just like, because he's right.
Yeah.
And he's just like, what you need to do. He's like, do you need this trip? And I think he was actually expecting me to say, yeah, because he was like, do you or Sarah really kind of need this trip? And I was like, no. In fact, the opportunity cost to not having worked these few extra days will make a big difference in being able to pay the bills. Because lately it's been tight for payroll.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, all right, fine, I'll work. And I knew too that people like my team, which is now at about 24 people between the three offices, that I was just like, I know that they're wondering how in the world is he doing this when he's always bickering, like having a bad attitude about how are we going to, pay for bills and junk like that right now. And I was just like, so that's it. I just need to expect to replan this trip for some other time. It might be a year from now or whatever. So I didn't tell Regan this, audience, but my fantastic news to share with you all, I'm canceling off a 2-week trip so that way I can make adult decisions to work enough to be able to meet our work goals.
Yes.
So we get done with our foundations class and we're talking about doing hard things and being bold and decisive.
Wait,
and
this is the Business Impact Foundations
That's right.
program. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And normally people think, well, okay, that's going to help you move up in life and find clarity by, and here I am just being like, all right, I need to double down. And that's the responsible thing to do. It's going to help me achieve my goals. And I've brought clarity by doing our 2-year plan. And when I established that 2-year plan, I realized, nope, this is exactly. And I'll tell you, I never thought it would feel so good to cancel vacation because I want to go, but I felt really good about canceling it because I was like, I know I need to be here. I want to go, but I need to be here.
I laugh because I relate. I relate so much to what you were saying. Making the adult decisions is not always fun. That you saw me go through that though. What was it? 2 years ago now when I bought my car that was not the Tesla. And I really felt
my car that was not that's a great way to word it.
But it was, I mean, think about it. I was so frustrated. I really wanted it. And my husband made me I was angry. That would be the term to use. I was driving away from the dealer angry because I really wanted it. And he was like, I mean, we can do it, but does this make sense? Like, do you need this? And that's what he said. Do you need this? And I realized in that moment, no, I don't need this. And there's a bigger picture here at play. And had I not listened to him, I would have made my life much more difficult, unnecessarily so. For what?
Yes.
What? Not so yeah, it hurts because you want that reward. You deserve that reward. I think that's one thing that I've seen.
That's what I want to tell myself.
Doctors.
Right.
Yes, you do deserve it. We worked harder probably this year than ever in just the stress alone of being closed for 9 weeks and figuring out what in the heck we're all going to do.
And wouldn't it be nice to justify it to yourself, like to decompress for a week or two?
Mm-hmm.
Wearing a mask on the beach. Come on. Isn't that? Oh.
The Hawaii has been a topic of conversation at my house often this whole, because we typically go at least once a year, once every other year.
Yes.
And I think that was where the Stockdale paradox that you were talking about comes into play. So our producer put this little definition in our chat box for us. And I want you listeners to hear this. So great companies and people must retain faith that they will prevail in the end, regardless of difficulties. And at the same time, they must confront the most brutal facts of their current reality, whatever they may be.
So that was in the book, Jim Collins' Good to Great book, that they coined that term from John Stockdale, who was Ross Perot's vice president running mate, just to give context. So, but that he was captured in the Vietnam War. He was an admiral, and Jim Collins asked Stockdale, so afterwards, who did the best and who didn't do the best? And he said, the people who didn't do the best were the ones that always expected that by Christmas, we're going to be out. I just know it. And then Christmas would come and go. And Stockdale was was a POW for 7 years. So, that would really crush your spirits unless there was the other person who did the best. That was the person that said, I know they're going to get us. I know we're going to get out. I don't know when. All I can do is focus on getting through today. And they said they even had Morse code to each other. So they would learn Morse code, and they would, like, for example, they would do happy birthday songs in Morse code to each other, for their birthdays. How sad and how crazy and how cool is that? But it gave them, some resolute power to get through that in spite of the difficulty. So yeah, this year has just been tough, and the Stockdale paradox, Stockdale principle, whatever, comes into play, because we could go, hey, the vaccine's coming. Hey, the election's coming. Hey, we're going to open back up. Hey, we'll get a new governor and they'll let us open back up. You're always thinking it's going to be better as soon as this and that. And it's like, that might be true.
That's because it's your future brain. Your
right.
future self, right? Your future self sits in a different part of your brain than today's. Yes. So that makes a lot of sense. So I guess what Stockdale was trying to say is stay in your reality, and do not look at the future self, because that's a different part. That's why so many people have trouble losing weight or hitting certain goals, because they say, tomorrow I will.
So take it back to me, jobless in May on the bike hill, looking at the sunrise going, this is where I need to be. I can't focus on the fact that I wish I was at work. I can't focus on the fact that my business is indefinitely closed, whether I want it to be or not. I just have to be here on the bike.
Regan Robertson here, co-host of Everyday Practices podcast. This year has been an absolute roller coaster. Are you finding yourself stuck worrying about the health of your business? Is it keeping you up at night? The truth is, you deserve a business that builds you up and doesn't run you down. You deserve something that's weatherproof. Starting January 14th, we are kicking off another PDA Business Impact Foundations program. Go to www.productivedentist.com/foundations and use the code FUTURENOW, all one word, FUTURENOW, for a $700 scholarship.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with Everyday Practices.